And then she said, "You're Thor. I can hardly walk."
Wait, what podcast is this?
Thanks, Kelly.
That's 2 weeks in a row. Welcome to the Lovecraft eZine podcast. Today is December the 10th, 2017. Our guest today is JF Dubow. Am I saying that right?
Dubo.
Dubow, I'm sorry. JF Dubow.
Like Blanche Debout.
What?
And JF wrote a book called A God in the Shed, which we'll talk about that and other things. So, yeah, and Matt, you have a prize, right?
Yes, I do. I actually have. This is from 1983. We've talked about it before. It is the Stephen King original printing of The Cycle of the Werewolf. So it has all the illustrations by Bernie Wrightson.
Kind of an unknown author, but okay.
Anyway,
I have the Frankenstein illustrated book by Bernie Wrightson. If you know what I mean, you'll understand why it's amazing.
Yeah. Matt, I've been looking for a copy of that for like 8 years. Just yeah.
It shouldn't be that difficult to find.
He's just saying.
Not in the first edition. It's really tough.
Okay, you want a first edition, all right.
If you would like to be in the running for that, between now and the 17th, you can send an email to lovecraftezineprizes@gmail.com and put Cycle of the Werewolf in the subject of the email. And I really appreciate you guys when you do this, all the nice things you say in the body of the email. Keeps us going, really. It is appreciated. So thanks. Continue to do that. Don't really have to say anything nice about Kelly if you don't want to. You don't feel obligated. But
how could they help, though?
Yeah. All right. Well, let's do introductions. Let's start with Rick.
Rick Lay, writer.
Pete, you're next.
Pete Rollick, alcoholic.
Hi, Pete.
okay, thanks, Kelly. Hi, I'm Matt Carpenter. I am pleased to say that we have sent out contracts to the authors for Hickman's Gallery. So that book should be happening by March of next year.
Kelly.
Kelly Young, executive editor, Strange Eons magazine.
I'm Mike Davis with Lovecraft eZine. And Jeff, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you?
Well, my name is Jeff Dubow. I'm a marketing director is my actual job. I'm an aspiring writer. I've been fortunate enough to be able to publish 2 books so far. Strangely enough, even though my specialty is branding and integrated design, I managed to brand myself in 2 different genres for my writing. So I'm not good at my job, apparently, when it comes to actually doing marketing for myself. Otherwise, what is there? I'm a certified and certifiable nerd. As you guys were talking about in pre-show, I have a ton of just a bunch of geeky stuff. I didn't even notice how nerdy my environment actually was until you guys started pointing it out. Now I'm really self-conscious about it. Thanks.
Everybody here has stuff like that, so I wouldn't be self-conscious now.
That's a good point.
So.
Like once a year, we walk around our houses and show off nerdy stuff. So
nice.
You're welcome to join.
It wouldn't be very long. I live in a very tiny apartment like some troglodyte.
All right. So I was browsing Barnes & Noble a few months back, and I came across your book. Again, it's titled A God in the Shed. And right away, that's kind of a unique title. So right away, that drew me in and made me pull the book off the rack and off the shelf, excuse me. And I opened it up, and there's a Lovecraft's Call of Cthulhu story. So, then I was kind of really sold, and I read the synopsis and was sold some more on it. Can you tell the audience what the book is about, kind of spoiler-free synopsis?
The book is essentially kind of your I don't want to say cliche because it's not a good selling point for my own work. But it's your typical small town, small village with dark secrets type of story. It's a story of a small town in the eastern township of Quebec called Saint Ferdinand that has for a few generations kind of been keeping a bunch of secrets, but with every generation, the bottle that keeps those secrets contained is showing more and more cracks. And the beginning of the story, it starts with them catching a serial killer that's been operating in the town for a couple of decades. And that is the final crack that shatters this bottle and sends events sort of tumbling down in that small village.
Yeah, the interesting thing about this, well, one of the many interesting things about it is that there's been serial killings going on in the town for what? Remember that, right?
Yeah, it's about 18 years.
Yeah, and yeah, and the serial killer is caught pretty much near the beginning of the book.
Yeah, it's not a spoiler to say that. Yeah, the first chapter is that's the inciting incident is that they catch a serial killer, and one of my reviewer described him as a serial killer with the best of intentions, and I'm not going to explain why that is because of spoilers, obviously, but you start to understand why his capture is what sort of sends things going, sliding towards darkness.
Sort of like Jack the Ripper in Night in the Lonesome October.
Yeah,
with the best of intentions.
I was going to suggest Clive Barker's Midnight Meat Train.
Mm.
Yeah.
Huge Clive Barker fan.
By the way, that Midnight Meat Train the movie is on Netflix right now, and who has not seen that should really see that, right, Pete?
Yes, I enjoy it.
Yes, I think I want to watch it again. Not to go off on a tangent, but I noticed something else new on Netflix. Damn it, I just went out of my head. What's the Marvel heroes that operate? Guardians of the Galaxy 2 is on already.
Yep.
So there you go. The things you learn on this show. It's amazing. Worth every penny that you pay listening. I don't want to give out any spoilers either, JF, but there's some really horrifying imagery in the book. Just one of the things I'll mention is that the serial killer has skewered human eyes on the ground, and they're all facing this cave in the woods. Am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah.
Yeah, and why we don't know. Maybe he's just insane. But like you said, he's got the best of intentions. So when I first started reading the book, I thought Crowley, the inspector, the police guy, was the, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And now I don't believe that he is. It seems like to me that the kids are more the heroes of the book. What do you think? Am I off base on that or on base?
I try to sort of keep a lot of gray areas as far as protagonists and antagonists go. Like I don't really believe, or I don't think that's it makes for very interesting characters. The people, like imagining that a character just wakes up every morning and says, I am going to do evil things. If I'm going to have someone have any villainous intentions, I need to anchor those into some kind of realistic motivations. Because of that, very often, a lot of my characters will have either they'll be good guys that have flaws, or they'll be bad guys that have good reasons, or not excusable reasons, but reasons that make logical sense. And the more you push either character in either way, the closer they get to one another. So in a way, even like the heroes aren't that heroic and the villains aren't that villainous. So it allows me to play with sort of the morality of the characters and the situations. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. And it's more of an ensemble cast, really.
Mm-hmm. Like I don't have a hero that's just a hero. Like the one of the problems I had, one of the mistakes I did, and my publisher also, we forgot to mention anywhere on the cover or in the synopsis that this is supposed to be the first book of a trilogy, which angered some of my readers, justifiably so. Like, no one wants to feel like they're being tricked into a series. Unfortunately, people seem to be forgiving enough, and I mean, the second book is coming out tentatively Halloween 2018. That's what we're aiming for. So, I mean, assuming we don't have to edit for 7 months, we should be good. But that being said, the second book plays a bit more with sort of the morality of the kids in the story and so on and so forth. Like, basically, the whole idea is to be able to never really pin down a protagonist, but be able to choose a character and hope that he's not the villain.
Yeah. Well, the title of every chapter in the book is the character that you're focusing on most in that chapter.
Let me comment
Is
on
interesting. Yeah, go ahead.
In all of the chapters, all your characters use the first name, except for Crowley. Was that deliberate?
Yes and no. It was at the beginning, like, I would just, because the problem with the character by introducing him by his first name, like, it's deliberate to use his last name, but the reason isn't very dark and complex, is because the character is supposed to be an authority figure. By introducing his chapters with her first name of Stephen, it felt like it didn't work. So introducing him as Crowley just felt a bit more on the nose for his role in the story and his role in the village. So there's no, like, I wish there was an Easter egg behind it, but no, there's plenty of other Easter eggs in the book, but some of them I'm disappointed no one has found yet, but time maybe.
Well,
yeah, go ahead, Pete. Sorry.
well, okay. So in the early part of the book, Venus is going to move into the shed. I mean, you led me down a path, because, here's Venus in the shed, and that has absolutely nothing to do with the rest of the story. But, it works, right? It juxtaposes this divine goddess who's supposed to be in the shed with what it actually ends up in the shed.
Yeah, it's kind of weird that she's the only main character named after a god, right?
Right.
No one's pointed that out yet, strangely enough. So,
well, that's what we do here. We point
kudos
those
to my friend for actually pulling that, what I thought was one of the obvious ones, but good job.
Okay, so was that you did that on purpose? And
yeah, no, there's a reason why she's called Venus, and it's not a boring reason, but it's also, I'm trying to make it not too much of an in your face or too much of a cliche reason. At the same time, it's not like a M. Night Shyamalan reveal. Like, there is a sort of a storytelling device behind that, and part of it was kind of a mislead.
Okay, worked.
To the whole good evil thing, I'm a big fan of shows like Buffy and Angel, but they're very black and white. Even in Angel, some of the characters, they say things like, "I'm evil, I believe in evil," which is plastic.
But
most
it worked.
don't feel that they're evil.
Yeah, but it works for things that are like, I mean, Buffy is very well seated in camp, and you can do that in that kind of universe. It's just, I mean, Buffy's not meant to be very realistic, or like, it's not meant to feel plausible. Like, it's half comedy, just a touch of horror, and a lot of teen adventure romance type stuff. So, I mean, it works to have a character proclaim themselves as evil the same way it would work for, say, like Princess Bride or something that's a bit more tongue in cheek. Which I'd love to have the capacity to write that kind of, like, sort of humorous type thing. It's just not something I'm very practiced at. I have ideas for it, but I just don't think I have the chops to write that funny of a story.
No, it's one of the things I liked about the book is that, this conflict between the two warring, factions, which is a Cold War, essentially, that's been going on for 18 years, both of which believe that they're right. And
Yeah,
yet,
everyone believes they're right.
yeah, exactly. And which is worse, the guy who tells you that, hey, I'm evil, or the guy who says, look, I'm good, but I got to kill you anyway?
Exactly. Like, I'm sorry I have to kill you. It's the only way to silence the voices.
Yeah. You played that out really well. What were the origin? You've got the Craftsman and the Sandman. Where do you draw those ideas from?
The name for the Sandman is explained in the second book. Spoilers. As far as the name for the Craftsman it's an evolution of an old sort of basically it used to be the Craftsmen's Association of St. Ferdinand, which was basically just kind of like the equivalent of a homeowners association, or just kind of like the community, like the local community club, if you will. And because that's the name they had, it kind of evolved into what it was. And Crowley kind of talks about it a bit in the beginning of the book. So it's more of an evolution of a boring name that became something more. But at the end, like, it just works for their little cult.
Okay.
When I read this, I had no idea it was a trilogy. That was actually going to be one of my questions for you, if you're going to write a sequel. So October 2018 or so.
That's the plan. That's what we're trying to do. Like, the sequel is written as a first draft, which means that right now it's a piece of just steaming garbage. I have 2 pages of notes that I need to go through to fix problems that as you write, you see the problems and you take notes, or at least that's the way I work. And now I need to go back and rewrite everything that is a mistake. And those are just chunks of chapters that just don't work anymore, because as I went through the process, I realized, well, this is not fitting at all. So, or you just get better ideas to replace certain things at the beginning. Like, I mean, it's not really a spoiler, but right now, like, the character of Venus feels very, very flat in the sequel, the way I've got it written. I know how to fix it. I just need to go back and fix it. So it's the process of the sequel is well on its way. So I gave the basic synopsis to my publisher so far. He seems very happy with it. If I can make it work, fingers crossed, then I think it'll be a good book. I'm hoping. Well, good enough to satisfy people who liked the first book is what I'm aiming for.
Are there other gods in this universe that you're creating?
Spoilers?
Meat. Whatever you want to say is fine. If you want to say you don't want to say anything, that's fine.
The mythology allows for these gods to be something that there's more of in general. Like, it's something that historically, this story has happened before in the world. These types of creatures it's not a unique creature. As for going into details, I just finished writing a sort of a mythology document to supply some screenwriters so that they understand what I have in the back of my mind, but none of it is really meant for public consumption. It's just to have an understanding of what the mythology is and what to draw from.
Wait. You said to provide a mythology to who?
The screenwriters.
Does this mean this thing has been optioned for TV or something?
Yeah, I last October, actually, in October 2016, Skydance Media optioned the rights for the book for television. So that's all I can say, because that's all that's public information right now. There's a huge difference between something being optioned and something actually being in development.
Right.
The stuff that's been optioned usually has less than a 10% chance of making it to TV. Some things stay in option for a very long time. I'll give you an example, actually. Skydance just very recently this week released the trailers for the Altered Carbon television show that they're producing. And that was optioned 15 years ago. So,
yeah,
I'm hoping they do something with it. I'm not holding my breath, but I'm pleased they're asking me for information and documentation. So that's a good start.
Where does?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead, Pete.
Oh, okay. No, I just wanted to check to see because I got a message that my microphone wasn't working. Sorry.
No, you're fine.
Go ahead, Mike.
Okay, this guy in the book, what in your mind, JF, between a demon, a powerful demon, say, and where does it cross over to this is a god demon? You know what I mean? And that question kept kind of rolling over in my mind as I read the book.
In the universe of that book, the difference between, say, a demon and a god would probably be just how what makes the god a god in the book is how it's kind of exists outside of common reality. Because it doesn't in a very, like, this is probably where it touches the most on Lovecraftian mythology, is the idea that it's an unknowable creature, and its powers they're vast, they're not meant to be understood, and they're extremely alien in how to manifest themselves, which it kind of allows for a lot of hand waving on the part of the writer. Like, it allows me to do what I want because, well, the god is this, because, screw reality. I try not to abuse that kind of leeway. As far as what a demon would be, I think a demon would be a bit more, at least in the universe I'm building, I'm not really introducing demons or angels. Like, there's no really Judeo-Christian mythology applied to it. But a demon would be probably just more of an evil spirits type thing, something lower powered, more grounded in things that humans can understand.
To what you were saying just a minute ago about what makes a god, I actually took a snapshot of a page that speaks to what you just said. And let me just read it. Terrifying, seductive whispers beckoned him to loosed body. He knew not to listen, that these were the temptations of the god calling to him. He also realized that the god wasn't in his niece's backyard shed at all, or rather what was locked up there amounted to the tip of a limb poking through a hole in reality. It was merely dipping a toe into the sea. So that's when I really got a Lovecraftian vibe again from it.
Yeah, that's exactly the scene I was kind of not alluding to, because that's way smarter than what I was doing, but that's what I had in the back of my mind. I was fumbling for an explanation.
Well, you talked about how you didn't want to limit yourself or break your own rules or whatnot, but you sort of you talk about that. Venus has a very specific way that she's caught the god in the shed,
mm-hmm.
and it's bound by certain rules. And you talk about how there's a difference between magic and sort of tricks that you play on the universe. That there is real magic.
I could define the 3 types of magic that I use in the book. And
go for it.
Because they're actually explained by the character Cicero towards the end. But very simply, there's 3 types of magic. One of them is better explained by Venus. She says, basically, they're glitches or backdoor into sort of the code of reality. These are like the things that they don't have a reason why they work, but if you do the same thing, it always has the same result, but it doesn't need to make sense. Those are the kind of things that you'd imagine being rituals. It's what Randy does in the I think the 2nd chapter, where he knows that by using iron nails on a corpse, by basically putting them in their eyes and their feet, it anchors their soul to like the land of the living for whatever reason is later told in the book. There's no logic to it. It's just something that reality does because there's something broken in how it's built that allows for that to be done. Then there's magic that's done through what I call art with a capital A, which is if you do something. Here's an example. We all have certain music that when we listen to, no matter what our current mood is, that music will change our mood to that. It feels already like in this very grounded reality that we live in right now, that already kind of feels like magic. Now imagine if that music was so perfect that it would do that to a perfect level, and then apply the same logic to other forms of art, like say cooking. Someone cooks a perfect meal, not a perfect meal like in like the kind of compliment you give your wife because you don't want her to be mad at you, but perfect as an objectively perfect food that would mend wounds, that would basically stretch the boundaries of what reality is meant to allow. If you paint an image that is so perfect that even reality doesn't know where the line between it forgets that. One of the characters in the book does paint birds like this. They're so perfect that reality doesn't forgets that they're not supposed to be real birds. So now they're real birds. And so that's the type of magic. It's the type of magic that requires entire lifetimes of dedication to a particular singular art, because perfection is not meant to be attained. And the third thing is anything. The very idea of having a creature as powerful as a god in the story, it's, to me at least, it feels illogical that something this powerful you could come into contact with and not be somehow changed. So the idea is that power, first of all, gods in and of themselves are quote unquote magical in just the way they influence reality. But just being in contact with them, or objects that would be in contact with them in certain ways, would be changed, and that would give them certain quote-unquote properties. And of course, since this is kind of leaning more towards the type of Lovecraftian writing, these properties are not, thematic X-Men superpowers, but usually darker, more complex, more of the soul type things.
Do you have a favorite character in the book?
I'm sorry, what?
Do you have a favorite character in the book?
I really like Abraham, but that's very much informed by what I wrote in the sequel for him. Otherwise, I really like Venus. She's a fun character. Venus and Penelope as two characters, independent of each other, they're okay, they're fun. But I really love the interaction between the two characters. And it's actually one of the problems I'm having with the second book, is that I don't have that much of that interaction as I would like. So I'm trying to fix that.
So wait a second, if I can ask another question. You talked about, Pete, how nobody picked up on the name Venus, but what about Penelope? As the wife of Ulysses, does that have any allusions also?
I'm not spilling the beans. I'm not spilling the beans on any of the characters. If you spot the reference and you can tell me, I will fess up to it.
Smarter than your average bears.
No, I mean, Penelope is there is a reference to the name. It's not a very clever one. It's not super deep or Easter eggy as much. There's more interesting ones, and I don't know. I don't want the book to become a hunt for Easter eggs either. They're just there, and people who find them, I think, will find them amusing.
Yeah,
So,
Easter eggs are always fun.
There. That's all I'm going to say about the Easter eggs.
The god, since this is a trilogy, are you going to explain more of the backstory, second and third books? Because it's not, the god's basically there, which, from a human standpoint, and if you're a human in the story, to know anything about the god other than what your interaction tells you. So it makes sense, but do you ever get into what the backstory of the god is?
Not from the god's point of view. As is hinted in the book, especially towards the end, there are people who have studied that kind of creature significantly more than what is accessible to the characters in the first book. So that information eventually makes it to the reader. but nothing like there's no omnipotent point of view explanation of where all of that's come from. And part of the reason for that is there's a lot of that mythology that I'm reusing in other stories outside of that trilogy. I just finished writing another book that's set in New England in 1875 that uses most of the same mythology and some of the same, not the same thematics, but a lot of the same moods. And I'm really comfortable with the mythology I built in this book, so I don't want to reveal everything in like the first trilogy I write about it.
Sure.
Like, I'll reveal what's necessary for the story to make sense and the story to be interesting. But if I can leave a few mysteries for people to go read other books that I write in the same sort of quote unquote universe, then I'm probably going to do that.
JF, what was your inspiration for writing this book? How did it begin?
Here's the interesting thing. So the book that I just finished, that's not part of that trilogy that I just mentioned, that uses a bit of the same mythology, was my initial idea. What I wanted to write initially was I wanted to do kind of a rewriting of the Adventures of Tom Sawyer, but with the Cthulhu mythos overlaid on top. I didn't think I had the chops to do it back then. There was a lot of historical research. There's a lot about like better understanding how, sort of the Gothic horde would need to be integrated into the South would work. There's a lot I just didn't feel ready to do. So I moved up the location to something more familiar, meaning that's why I put it in the Eastern Townships of Quebec. I go there, I understand the location, I understand the culture that happens there. I moved it to closer to the present, so I didn't have to do too much towards the historical. And basically, I just removed any obstacle between me and creating what I hope would be compelling characters. But after doing all this paring and these modifications, this cutting of this and cutting of that, I ended up with something so tremendously different that it kind of became its own thing. And now I went back to the original idea, and then I moved it to New England, and I changed some other things, and it's still a completely different thing than what I wanted to do originally. But that was more my original inspiration. I just wanted to take a classic American story and mythos it up.
So you're a Lovecraft fan, obviously. When did you get into Lovecraft, and how?
I got into Lovecraft probably, I want to say, middle of high school. My brother has probably one of the most impressive collection of core books for role-playing games, and has every edition of the Chaosium role-playing game for Call of Cthulhu. And he basically kind of introduced me to Lovecraft through the role-playing game. Never really got a good game off the ground because not very good at not going insane while playing it. But that's what kind of got me into it. Like, one of the things that I remember is the edition that we were playing with, I think it was the third edition, has, I think it's 1 or 2 pages that is just all the qualifiers used by H.P. Lovecraft to define Cthulhu, and most of them mean nothing. And it's just like a page or 2 pages of just adjectives, and like words like unknowable, indescribable, and all that, things that don't really give you any clue. And I loved the idea of, one of the things that really attracted me to it is I love the idea of playing with trying to explain the unexplainable, especially in a horror setting.
So JF, I've just signed a contract for a story called The Nomenclature of Unnameable Horrors.
Awesome.
Which deals with exactly what you're talking about. This tendency for us to want to define things. And sometimes the way we define them is by saying that they're undefinable.
Which is, it's so hard, because on one end you want to keep it undefinable because that makes it more horrible, but you don't want to necessarily cheat the reader out of the experience of, like, you don't want to force too much into the reader's mind either. Yeah, it's an interesting challenge to describe the undescribable, because you want to layer metaphors one on top of the other to try to not necessarily define the thing itself, but sort of, I don't know, sketch around it. Basically, in graphic design, it would be called using negative space. So instead of defining the creature that's supposed to be undefinable, you define everything around it in the hopes that it basically draws the outline that the readers can fill in themselves. Does that make sense? No.
It does.
Yeah.
Michael Sisko has a new book coming out called Unlanguage, where you have to define things not by what they are, but what they are not.
Yes.
And it's been that is interesting concept, and hopefully that book will be out soon.
That actually brings me to a question that I have about how it ties into your writing. You work in graphic design, and looking at your webpage, I actually had a couple questions. Like, did you do the art on the cover of The Life Engineered? I was wondering.
I did not. I'm not that good an artist.
Well, I don't know about that, because you also did this comic.
Wait, how is that still on the website? That's not supposed to be there. Like the second person who says, "Oh no, the comic's still on the website." No, it shouldn't be. This thing's horrible.
We have our ways.
The Eldritch Age. You haven't done anything with it for a couple of years, as far as I know.
No,
but,
the Eldritch Age was kind of a challenge I gave myself to do a page a week for an entire year. I did that, and unfortunately, like I wasn't. As time went on, I was spending less and less time on each page, so like the art was going down. And
could you tell us what that was? It was because you were playing with comics at the time, I guess.
Yeah, well, that was before I really At that time, I had just finished writing, I think, my third book, and I was I was working on getting the Life Engineered published through Inkshares, and I was still looking for what type of storytelling would be my thing, so to speak. I knew I was really in love with long form storytelling and novels, but also the industry is unkind for novel writing.
Yeah. And
I was much more familiar with especially the marketing dynamics of webcomics. And so I figured I could try my hand at doing this, but the first thing that I need to do, like I know I can write a book in 6 months to a year fairly easily. So I know I can do that. I know I can produce a novel. But can I produce a webcomic on a sufficiently regular basis? Because that's one of the things that's super important about doing any kind of serial work on the internet. You need to be consistent. You need to be reliable to your readers. So I wanted to see, can I do this for a year? Can I do one page a year and see and hopefully see the quality of the work increase? But instead of seeing it increase, I saw it decrease because I could spend less and less time on every page. So I kind of gave up.
Well, I was wondering if your work in visual media affected your work as an author at all. Like, if you have say there's something in your head and you're trying to depict it in words. Do you know what I mean?
I refuse to say that it didn't, because that would be weird that such a huge portion of my career had no impact on my writing. I wouldn't say, I would actually say that I have a hard time getting a clear image of anything in my head. One of the very reasons why I like to draw is because it allows me to take something that's vague and undefined in my brain and give it more specific form on paper or on the computer or wherever. And I think that there's definitely a parallel to writing in that sense. Like when I'm writing a scene or I'm writing a character, I'll have an idea of what I want, but it's not like I've got the series of words already formed up in my brain. And the act of actually writing the scene is what helps give it form. So I think that would be that would be the parallel I would draw between the two art forms, at least for how I approach them.
So A God in the Shed is actually your second book, correct?
It's my second published book. I've written about 6 books so far, and there's a solid 4 in there that will never be seen by another human being.
Well, tell us about The Life Engineered.
The Life Engineered is diametrically opposite of God in the Shed. It's one of the things that was bothering me a lot about science fiction was how it was taking definitely dystopian point of view. Everybody was writing a post-apocalyptic nightmare world. Everybody that was writing about robots was writing about, oh, the robots are going to be our enemies. And I have a lot of difficulty looking at how AI development could actually go Terminator on us. There's too much that doesn't make logical sense to lead to a robot apocalypse. I could go on for a while. I got into a bit of an argument with Andrew Main, their author, about the idea of why I don't think robot apocalypses are possible, or rather, tremendously unlikely. So I wanted to write. Well, okay.
Wait a second, because this interests me. Why do you think it's unlikely?
Because everything, like every scenario that leads to a robot apocalypse involves a lot of hand waving. One of the favorite that keeps being quoted is the whole paperclip scenario. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it, but the idea is that if you have a computer that's super intelligent and you ask it to make paperclips, it will eventually turn the entire planet into paperclips because it's so much more intelligent and so much more powerful that we could not stop it. However, here's some of the hand waving for that. Have you guys ever bought a piece of software and wanted to install it on your computer only to realize that your computer can't run it?
Sure.
Yeah. So even if we reach the legendary singularity for in artificial intelligence, the point where an artificial intelligence is so powerful and so smart that it can create a better version of itself, and we don't want it to. The answer is very simple. We don't upgrade the hardware. It's not going to be like, the thing is, it's going to encounter physical limitations long before it's dangerous. And unless we give it the possibility of creating its own hardware, or we give it hardware, it's the same thing as when you have scenarios in science fiction. It's like, oh, like the super intelligence uploaded itself to the net. The net ain't gonna hold a super intelligence. It's just not the proper framework for it. It's not the right architecture for it. And it's not gonna upload. If it's that smart, if it's that vast of a piece of software, it's not gonna upload in 5 seconds. It takes me 3 minutes to upload a video. It's the idea of having a super intelligence that's powerful enough to subjugate humanity, upload itself into a super intelligence that will control the entire internet or whatever. Also, it'll go crazy reading the internet. It'll just be cats everywhere.
As I say, you just ruined Age of Ultron for me.
Oh, wait, that's what ruined Age of Ultron for you?
So The Life Engineered is not dystopian, in other words.
No, it's not dystopian. It's basically, there's no humans in the story. The first chapter will trick you into thinking there's humans, but there are none. There's humans in the prologue, and that is it. And it's basically I was trying to imagine, what if we did create artificial intelligence? Because another reason why artificial intelligence would probably not destroy us is that it would never have a motivation to. There's no, like, one of my favorite is always like, oh, the machines would enslave us. No, the machines can create significantly more efficient machines to do what they would have us do. Like, oh, they would destroy us because we're a threat. If they're that powerful, we're not a threat. Like, there's no, I'm looking at it like a crime novel. You need motivation, you need opportunity, and you need means. Opportunity and means are things we would supply, and motivation is really difficult to actually parse out.
Yeah,
so anyways,
those are good arguments.
Okay, so about this No Humans, this is kind of reminding me of Charlie Strauss's novel Saturn's Children. Did you read that?
I did not, but I've heard about it.
His idea was that considering vast interstellar distances, that the realism with trying to say humans are going to master the stars is preposterous. So he hypothesized a future when humans had gone extinct, and what was left were their descendants, which were artificial life forms. And so basically it was the robots were the life forms, and they're the ones that were going all over the place.
Yeah, that's basically what I wrote. The thing I wanted to explore mostly with Life Engineered was how we would get to that point, and also because one of the things I'm always a bit baffled is when robots are just humans, like they have 2 legs and 2 arms, and that just doesn't feel like that's. I mean, that's all well and good when you're on the surface of a planet, but a vast majority of the universe isn't the surface of a planet. And if you're a robot, why would you stay on Earth? So the whole the basic premise of Life Engineered is basically a race of robots called Chepeks, who the way they're born, their minds are created through a process called the nursery, where they just go through a bunch of simulated human lives until they have a sort of balanced personality. And then they're allowed to design their own bodies. So if you've lived 1,000 lives and you have this running theme where you're really into exploring gas giants, you're going to probably build yourself a body that is adapted to living in the atmosphere of gas giants to, explore that and experience that. If you're more into just you like interacting with the other robots and you like traveling a lot, you'll probably just be a sentient spaceship with a lot of cargo room to transport other robots and just be this interstellar taxi service. So I wanted to just play around with the idea of having these creatures are extremely, basically flip the trope on itself. Like a lot of times we see, oh, they're robots with human bodies, but alien minds because they're robots, so they don't think like us. I think it would be a lot more fun if the robots fought like us because they lived simulated human lives for a very long time, but they built bodies that were adapted to how they wanted to exist and live their lives, so they look very different and extremely alien. And just I played around with that sort of trope, and so that storyline gave it a bit of a Civil War type thing, and the whole thing turned out to be a motherhood allegory with the main character. So there's that, I guess.
Well, it sounds interesting. I'll have to pick it up.
I mean, I like it, but I'm biased, like a lot.
Well, what are some of your favorite books, movies, TV shows, that sort of thing? Do you have shoot out a few favorites? What do you like?
As far as books, I'm a huge fan of Clive Barker. He does this thing, not with all of his books. Like he's got a lot of books that are very, I mean, they're good too for more grisly horror. If you look at especially his older catalog of books, some of his more recent stuff, well, not that recent, like still decades old, because God damn it, I'm old. But some of his stuff is more, I would call literary fiction horror, if you will. Things like Galilei, which is my favorite book, and Imagica, The Great and Secret Show, and Neverville. They do this thing that I've tried to do with God in the Shed, and I'm trying to do with the sequels and with all the books in that kind of universe, where they kind of make, like, I like to call it beautiful terror and terrible beauty, and how they kind of circle back to one another. The whole idea of something being so scary that it's beautiful, and something that's just too gorgeous to be not scary. And he does that super well in Galilei, and in describing Galilei, if you don't know, basically the story between the quote-unquote Kennedys and a race of ancient gods, and how they've got this, both a family feud, but that's based on certain John F. Kennedy-esque relationships. Anyways, and it's the way he describes how this family of divine beings is, is really manages to be both scary and just awe-inspiring, and I absolutely love that of his writing. As far as movies, very recently, Blade Runner 2049 toppled every other movie I had as my favorite. That movie is soul-crushingly beautiful and depressing and visually
I heard
impressive.
it was great. I wonder why it didn't do well at the box office. I didn't get a chance to see it yet.
I hate to sound like an elitist, but the problem is it does not deliver on the promise of a sequel of Blade Runner, or rather it does, but not the Blade Runner that's more action oriented. But it delivers on the thematics and kind of cranks them up to 11. It's a heart-wrenching movie. If you catch all the little subtle nuances of the character interactions and how some of the characters relate to one another and how these relationships are systematically destroyed one after another until there's really only one left, and even that one has a bit of an issue to it. It's a really, like, I mean, this is not going to sound terribly manly, but I will cry at movies all the freaking time. Like, I bawl like an idiot during 20 minutes of Up, but that's kind of a litmus test to see if you have a soul, I think. But that movie,
yeah, well, you're not alone there.
Yeah, my wife hates that movie, and so she has no soul.
Oh wow! Well, that explains.
Well, you better hope Mandy never watches this.
It really explains The Mirror, though.
Yeah.
Kind of seems like that's from whence she comes. Anyways. Favorite movie. I like movies that will make me feel things, and 2049 made me feel a lot. So that was great for me.
At the beginning of the show, you described yourself as an aspiring writer. I'm wondering, what does literary success, which first of all sounds pretty humble to me, but what does literary success mean to you?
Okay, so
what does success mean?
I'm gonna walk this back. I'm an aspiring professional writer. I am a writer. One of the things that I've learned in the past year is, because I've always tried to be humble. Like, I don't want to be the guy that is just this pompous arsehole, and I know I can slip into that very easily. And I probably have at least once or twice in this podcast already. Interview, video cast. I don't know what you guys call it. eZine. So, anyways, the problem I've realized is that I interact with a lot of other writers and aspiring writers, and I have 2 published books. One of these books is optioned. I'm pretty much have a 3rd publishing contract. My career as a writer is going well, and I realized recently, like in the past year, that every time I said I'm still an aspiring writer or I'm not good, I was taking a huge dump on everybody that was a few steps behind me and following in my footsteps, like for whom I was kind of trailblazing, because I'm essentially saying I'm garbage and you're 2 steps behind garbage. So what I thought was being humble wasn't. It was just being dumb or wearing the mask of modesty without actually being modest. So I'm trying to be a bit more realistic and saying, so I want to walk that. Like, I'm an aspiring professional writer because I can't make a living off of it yet. I'm on the right path. It seems to be going well. The rug can still be pulled from under my feet at any moment. So it's not like I'm making promises to myself that in a year I'm living off of this. But I don't know the recipe, but I think I've got most of the ingredients, in the sense that, like, I'm working hard at it and hopefully making some of the right choices. But I know it's a garbage industry, so I'm not going to pretend I'm a professional writer yet, because I still need to wake up tomorrow morning at 6:30 and go to my job.
Well, on that note, tell us about your experiences with Inkshares.
Inkshares is an interesting platform. I got onto Inkshares fairly early because I'm a listener of the Sword and Laser podcast with Tom Merritt and Veronica Belmont, 2 absolutely fantastic people. And they were approached by Inkshares to sort of sponsor a contest that they were doing, basically a sci-fi fantasy writing contest where whoever had the most pre-orders on Inkshares would get a publishing contract from Inkshares and be in the Sword and Laser collection. That was interesting to me on two fronts. First of all, as a fan of Tom Merritt and Veronica Belmont, I really wanted to be in their collection just for the bragging rights. The friends I have, the community I'm in, we're all fans of Sword and Laser and what those two do. So it would just have been a huge badge of honor for me. Simultaneously, a publishing contract, yo. So
Yeah.
I got on board, but at the same time, I look at the thing is, I was looking at it's like crowdfunding for books. It seems disingenuous, seems to not reward quality, but just reward how much you can hustle. And also, it didn't feel very genuine as a form of publication. So I got in contact with their CEO, and I talked to them about what the model actually was. And back then, you needed 1,000 pre-orders to get published. But he explained, he went over the numbers with me and says, the thing is, this is what we do as far as the publication, the production chain that we do. We work with Girl Friday Production, which work with other big 5 publishers. They're talking and he explained that everything from the point where it's financed is an actual bona fide production, it's distributed by Ingram for reals. There's an actual print run. It's not print on demand. Not that there's anything wrong with these. There's something about print on demand that's really cool. I want to get back into self-publishing for some projects because there's a lot of freedom in there too. But I wanted to make sure that this wasn't a vanity press. And the other thing he impressed upon me is that selling 1,000 pre-orders does not cover the full cost of production, and the balance is supplied by Inkshares. So they have a personal investment. They're not just they're not just a vanity press that's trying to be the puppy mill of books. So the only thing is that their model replaces the slush pile with community involvement. So their idea, what they wanted to do, is get as many readers involved as possible, so that readers would pick the books that they wanted to see published. And that got me on board, and I managed to get my book into the Sword and Laser collection and published, and from there I got a second book funded on Inkshares, and now I'm kind of part of their their cast of characters, I guess. So that's
selected by readers. I think that's an interesting. So I was curious.
Yeah, it's one of the things I feel was kind of lacking in the way they describe it, because they describe it as crowd-funded marketing, publishing, but the funding portion doesn't pay for, it pays for about, I think it's between 40 and 60% of the production costs. So that's not crowdfunding entirely. It's just partial crowdfunding. And I prefer to call it crowd-voted publishing, because obviously if you're good at hustling, you can get a crappy book published on Inkshares. And unfortunately, Inkshares will not publish books that don't reach their funding. So there's a lot of good books that kind of fall through the cracks. However, the current CEO and the current staff, they do go through a lot of the books that are in funding, and some of the ones that stand out because of their quality, even if they're not necessarily getting the attention they deserve, sometimes they'll get bubbled up to full publishing just because they got found. So it works.
Yeah.
And
well, I found the book at Barnes & Noble, which it's great to be in an actual brick and mortar bookstore. It
is still weird. I was every time I go downtown here in Montreal, I stop at the Indigo, which is our big chain up here in Canada, and one of my friends accused me of doing these as vanity visits to the bookstore, which I took offense to that. I look at it more as market research, and I just like the idea of I just like going to the bookstore and just slipping in some bookmarks and making sure. I also look at other Inkshares books, how they're doing, if they're displayed well. So I guess there maybe is a bit of vanity, but it's really more about reminding myself that this is real.
So, how can people follow you online? You keep up to breast on your projects and so forth. Facebook, Twitter, that kind of stuff.
I think the best places are Facebook and Twitter. I'm on Twitter at JFDubeau. That's at JFDUBEAU. And I've got a writer's page on Facebook, which I'm trying to use more. I used it more before, but I got distracted, which is at facebook.com/jfdubeau.writer.
Okay. And Twitter, I think you're JFDubeau as well.
Exactly.
Okay. Is there anything that you want to talk about that I didn't think to ask about?
I'm currently funding a book on Inkshares. I'm funding the sequel to The Life Engineered. Because God in the Shed is doing well and got optioned, like we're talking about different ways of getting it published without having to do the crowdfunding. So that's not a worry. But Life Engineered is a different project. It's a different IP. It's not optioned. So they're leaving me to crowdfund that one. So, but it's the sequel to Life Engineered. It's called Arch Android. It can be found at inkshares.com/arch-android. And I call it a sequel, but it stands alone as a story. The stories I write in that universe aren't dependent on each other. There's a general overarching narrative, but the books themselves don't need to be read in any particular order. So people who want to check it out, like my book trailer for it is terrible. The voiceover for it is great. It was done by the audiobook actress who did The Life Engineered. She did the recording for the audio for the book trailer. It's just the visual and it's. I need to get better at that. But there's a sample chapter and there's a synopsis there that you guys can check out.
Yeah, I know several audio voice actors, voice readers, and it is definitely not something I'm good at, and definitely a lot harder than it looks, at least for me.
I have a writing podcast where we interviewed Amy to get a better idea of what it took to be a voiceover narrator. Oof. It's a lot of work, and anybody that's read The Life Engineered knows that I was unkind to the audiobook narrator by using a lot of extremely strange names. Not invented names. I borrowed a lot of names from mythologies. And when you start delving into South American mythology and Polynesian mythology, there's a lot of apostrophes and consonants there that do not belong together. And she did all the research to make sure that she was giving it the proper pronunciation. So kudos to her.
Well, again, the name of the book is A God in the Shed. It's available in print and Kindle by J.F. Dubeau. And I recommend it.
Hey, JF, you were talking about Twain and Lovecraft. Did you ever read Dread Isle by Joe Lansdale?
I have not.
You may want to just eyeball it. It's interesting when different authors come up with the same idea and the different directions they go.
I'm definitely going to have a look at that. Can you repeat the name?
Dread Island.
Red Island? Okay.
Well, thanks for talking with us, Jeff. You gonna stick around while we talk about some other nerd stuff?
Oh, absolutely. And
okay.
Just so I don't forget, like, thanks for having me. This is fun. I love chatting with other nerds.
Well, we are that, yeah.
How dare you?
See, and that's why we have you here, Kelly, to keep us humble.
Yeah. Everyone here is a nerd except Kelly, who...
Wait.
If I put him on the screen here, you can see his little toys in the background there.
Those are action figures, not dolls.
Yeah, our friend Philip Fracassi, who is sometimes here on the panel with us, but is not here today, he has a book called Behold the Void. Very good collection, and it is, I believe, for the next week only, 99 cents. The Kindle edition is 99 cents. So, pick that up on Amazon.
Yeah, really.
Behold the Void by Philip Fracassi.
Really good stuff.
Yeah, well, it's all your fault. You introduced me to Philip, so.
I have no answer for that.
Hey, wait, doesn't Philip owe me money? Anyway.
I believe he does. Yeah. Yeah, we'll talk about that offline. All right. So here's a few articles I ran across. Don't expect Stranger Things 3 until 2019. David Harbour, this is Bloody Disgusting. David Harbour, who plays Jim Hopper on the series, confirms that we'll be waiting until at least 2019 for the return of the Demigorgons. The Duffer Brothers need time to work out the scripts.
Won't the kids age out, or are they going to advance the story? That
it said they're going to advance the story a couple of years.
Okay, so one of the things people talk about Harry Potter, actually, one of the things I enjoyed about the movie was you got to see the kids grow up during the movie. I mean, it didn't exactly correlate, but I thought that was really it helped make it more fit in with the books.
Yeah. Okay. So, go ahead, Pete. You go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. You're more important.
I was just going to say, quick vote. No, I'm not. Quick vote. Who is Stranger Things 1 or Stranger Things 2, or do you guys have a preference? Do you like them both equally?
I like 2 better.
I liked 1. My 2 little girls who watched it with my mother-in-law liked 2 better.
Kelly? I think I liked 2 better also, and I'm only basing that on I felt like I could have dropped 3 episodes out of season 1 and been just fine with it, and I only felt like I needed to drop 1 episode out of season 2.
Yeah.
You told me that what was it? Episode 7 was your favorite.
How dare you? Those are literally fighting words.
What were you going to say, Pete?
The character, the actor who plays Hopper.
David something. I forget now.
Yeah. Apparently he was doing some Shakespeare in the Park and in the middle of the performance tore his Achilles.
That's interesting.
And told the stage crew that, I need to, I tore my Achilles. I can't go on. They said, yeah, you got to get out there. And he ended up finishing that night in a chair.
The show must go on.
Yeah.
Showbiz is brutal, man. We don't know. I mean, everybody breaking rocks for a living could be worse. They could be in showbiz.
Yeah. But, yeah.
He's playing Hellboy, isn't he?
Yeah, I was about to bring that up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wait a second. He's Hellboy?
He's going to be Hellboy.
He's going to be the new Hellboy.
Oh, come on.
Oh, he's been working out. It's he's transforming.
Like Chris Pratt.
Did you like Stranger Things, Jeff?
Here's my problem.
No, your problem with Stranger Things or your problem in general?
In general. See, I have very little time, and I have not yet watched Stranger Things.
You're no nerd. What are you doing on this podcast?
Take away his nerd status.
I've been given strict instructions by my publisher to watch Stranger Things immediately 6 months ago.
Immediately.
And then I said,
immediately, or we will never publish another one of your books.
That was the implied threat. My answer was that I could either watch Stranger Things or start working on the sequel that they wanted. And they said, well, okay, do the sequel, but then you have to watch Stranger Things, which I guess means I should watch it now. And I want to. It checks all the boxes for things I would like. I just haven't done it yet. Yeah,
the small town with secrets thing, which, you called a cliche at the beginning of the podcast, but there's a reason why that's a cliche. If it's done right, it's always refreshing, and it's something about it I really like personally.
Well, that's the thing. The difference between a cliche and a classic. A classic is a cliche.
Right.
In some ways, I was reminded of both Twin Peaks and Haven. Is the prevalence of secret societies and towns with secrets and whatnot.
Yeah, but Haven sucked.
Well, thank you. That's where I was going to go. But
I tried to watch that show, but it was just impossible.
I watched 3 seasons of it, and I still don't know what was going on. And I was sober most of the time.
Speaking on this same track, there's a show called Dark.
Yeah, from Germany.
And I'm told that it's kind of Stranger Things type show. I'm told that I really need to watch it.
It's
Have
on
you,
my
any of you guys
list.
seen
I
it?
haven't watched it yet.
It's on my list, but I have been, out of commission for 3 days. I haven't been able to read subtitles. So I finished up some other shows, Voyager, Punisher.
Those old eyes of yours finally giving out?
Yeah, you have something going on with your eyes?
No, I've had a head cold for 3 days.
Just go with old age, Kelly. That's
Yeah.
probably really what's
You
going on.
can't read when you have a cold?
Sometimes I don't want
He
to read.
reads out loud. He did not want to admit it. Okay.
Okay.
Well, this one, I have a
No judgment.
Pete, since you finished Punisher, how'd you like it?
Punisher was a slow burn for me. I did like the last 3 episodes. I thought they finally wrapped it up well. A little bit of a spoiler. I don't think this should have been called The Punisher. I think it should have been called The Origin of Blank, this supervillain.
Oh,
That's what it really was.
I thought you were going to say it should have been called The Punished because Jesus, he took a lot of fucking punishment in that show.
Well, yeah.
It strained believability there a bit. How much can you take and still keep going on? Those last 2 episodes took place over like 8 hours or something.
Yeah,
and you're shot
I'd love to
and
see a
stabbed.
timeline.
Well, okay, well, the same thing, you could say the same thing about Daredevil. It's like one of the things that got me about Daredevil is like, let's watch the hero get beat up every show. Okay, great. I didn't sign up for this. Aren't you supposed to be kicking ass? Aren't you supposed to be getting the girl? No, he gets beat up every day and he doesn't get the girl.
Yeah, and healing is not one of his powers.
No, so he sits there with a big bloody lip, black eyes, scrapes all over.
Well, the other thing, in that case, I want to get Matt's opinion on this. We get all these shows where the heroes, keep getting shot, end up in the hospital, or great after like 2 or 3 weeks. I mean, you take a bullet, that's gonna be with you for a while.
Okay, this is how I think about that because these people are, for the most part, Daredevil has by this point completed law school. Matt Murdock completed law school, which makes him at the youngest 26, and probably since he's practicing, let's say 28. Okay, there's a comedian I watched. It's like he was saying he was 40. And he was saying, like, okay, so like when I was 20, I was rubbing my shoulder, and your friend said, "You hurt your shoulder? What happened?" He says, "Oh, I got drunk and I tackled a Volkswagen. I'm going to shake it off." And he said, "I turned 40 and I'm rubbing my shoulder," and your friend says, "What happened?" He says, "Someone startled me." You just don't, when you get older, you just don't recuperate like that. And when you have a major injury, you don't recuperate like that. Even the pro football players have ice baths and paid masseuses and all the physical training that you want, and some of them they can't go back to the game. Do you know what I mean?
I know what you mean. What you guys are saying is that the Punisher and where am I echoing at? The Punisher, yeah, I'm echoing in Matt's. The Punisher and Daredevil, they're no Batman. Is that what you guys are saying? That's what I heard.
I'm gonna play my geek card hard on this one because the Punisher's first appearance was in a Spider-Man comic, and I would love to see this new Spider-Man kid up against the Netflix Punisher, because I think that would just be amazing to see that humor and then that dark tone contrasting. And I really loved this season of the Punisher.
Girls still talk to you?
No, why would you even bring that up?
One girl does, but she lives out of state.
Right, she doesn't actually have to deal with me.
Well, she watches the show. That's about, she swear it off finally.
Yeah, she's long gone.
Huh? She's long gone. Okay, well, it's probably my fault. FX is developing a Welcome to Night Vale show.
I'm surprised it took that long.
This is supposed to be like the best fiction podcast ever, and I tried listening to it, and I'm not here to diss it. I'm not saying that at all. I just couldn't get into it, and it seemed like my kind of thing, but I couldn't get into it.
I'm in the same boat, but judging by how popular it is, I thought someone would have jumped on doing something with that earlier.
Yeah, I predict 3 episodes.
Jeez.
Why?
It's going to be completely mangled through production and rewrite and other people putting their fingers into it. And they've done a really good job of translating their vision into something that they've controlled and into an audio format.
Right, and they've got a couple of books.
Right. But
and the premise is you're listening to a radio show, correct?
Right.
Mm-hmm. So are they going to is the episodes going to be the events that he's describing on the radio show, which has a little bit of humor and all that, but now we're going to see them actually happening with actors?
I think you're right, Pete. It'll be hard to make this work.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. You can do it. What is it? Night Gallery did a really good job at doing some of this. Doing this kind of running the fine line between humor and horror.
They also sometimes did a lousy job too.
Yeah, well, some of them did a lousy job too, and they didn't last that long.
You could tell all the episodes written by Jack Laird.
Yeah,
most of them failed except the Lovecraft one.
Right. So, I just these are people. These are a small group of people who have a vision and have been able to manifest it in their way, and I'm just concerned that they're going to turn it over to somebody and it's all going to get ruined.
Well, Wayne's World in the movie.
I can interject some cryptic encouragement, if you will, but it has been my limited experience that sometimes studios can be surprisingly defensive of the property they purchase. And if they paid good money to have a specific IP, they tend to want to keep that IP intact because they paid a lot of money for it. So I know we have a lot of examples where that doesn't happen, but we also have examples where it does. So,
well, next headline: AMC breaks the ice on The Terror with a chilling sneak peek. AMC. Let's see. This is an article written on the 9th. Today's the 10th.
Dan Simmons' book.
Yeah, Dan Simmons' book. So during the mid-season finale of The Walking Dead, AMC is debuting a sneak peek of its next major foray into televised horror, The Terror. So, did you guys read The Terror? I know you did, Kelly, didn't you?
Yeah, man, it's one of my favorite books, actually. I loved it so much that I then went and did a ton of research on the original story that The Terror is based on. And it was really interesting to read it because you realize that, Dan Simmons did all that research too. And so I was just reading The Terror without the supernatural element. So really, really fascinating story.
How do you think they'll do on the TV series?
The pictures look really, really cool. I haven't seen the sneak peek. I think a couple episodes ago I said that I had seen a teaser for it, and what I had seen were pictures, and then I had mistaken or mixed up the fact that I had seen the trailer for The Alienist.
Yeah, which I was going to say, another book that you like and I enjoyed too. Matt did not enjoy, if I remember correctly. Is The Alienist, and it's going to be on TNT.
Matt didn't like The Alienist?
No, why would I?
It's beautifully written. That first paragraph is so gorgeous.
Not aliens at all. What the hell?
That was a cheap one. I feel bad for laughing at that.
Well, the teaser for The Terror looks really great. It really does. I'm very excited to see it. You like Antarctic kind of horror, which, we all love The Thing.
Oh, yeah.
I posted a link to it on the web page. The Facebook page.
Arctic horror, actually.
Arctic, Antarctic.
They're really not the same.
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
Only off by a couple 100,000 miles.
in the 19th century, they were the same.
See, Rick says so.
Somebody point. You remember that creep show segment, The Crate?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, it says Arctic Expedition, and somebody pointed that out when because we were saying, on some news group I was on it. They used to use the terms interchangeably at the time of that expedition, so it could have been to the Antarctic.
Is that true?
That's what I was told. I don't remember who told me. It was somebody fairly well informed at the time.
And not only that, but that crate eventually ended up in Riverdale.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
How's this for a headline? Ridley Scott says future Alien films will focus less on aliens.
Oh fuck! Fantastic! Finally.
Oh yeah, I was really hoping that we would get less of what we want.
It'll
be called people.
Cyborgs?
Here's a quote. We are going to make another one. We are. I think what we have to do is gradually drift away from the alien stuff. And why wouldn't you, with the name being aliens? People say you need more alien, you need more face pulling, more chest bursting.
Illegal aliens.
So I put a lot of that in the Covenant, and it fitted nicely. But I think that if you go again, you need to start finding another solution that's more interesting. I think AI is becoming much more dangerous and therefore more interesting. We talked about this already on the show today. So aliens, it'll be called aliens, I guess, but it'll really be AI.
Does he get a say in the matter anymore?
I know nothing.
Do you think Disney just paid $1 billion to let him tank that series anymore?
I think that he listened to Matt Carpenter, and this is now Ridley Scott's The Alienist.
I'm sure he does watch the show, yeah.
I love Ridley Scott, and I love what he's created for us, but I think he needs to figure out what actually went wrong with Prometheus, and that it wasn't that there was too much alien in it. That's not the problem. It's what he did. It's because he tried to explain the alien too much. Like, don't give us less alien. Just make the alien again, and we'll be fine. But
they're not aliens anymore. They're Disney princesses.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, the problem is that the word alien is buried somewhere in the title of the series. So you have to have aliens. You're supposed to laugh at that joke, but whatever. I guess.
No.
I guess it's a dad joke.
It was funny.
It was really funny. If you're a Patreon, you know that Kelly and I just did a Patreon podcast the other day where we talked about our favorite haunted house and ghost story films. Excuse me. And so if you're not a Patreon, I hope you become one, because there's lots of extra content. Lovecraft eZine, just Google Lovecraft eZine Patreon, and you'll come across it. But anyway, as a result, Kelly went and watched The Awakening.
Yeah. In the grand British tradition of telling ghost stories at Christmas, we thought that this would be a good idea. And it was funny because we had a lot of the same movies on our list, but you popped up The Awakening, which I thought I had seen, and then I went and saw that it was streaming free on Netflix right now. And I watched it, and I thought it was excellent. I hadn't seen it before, and it is a nice, quiet, scary ghost story.
Who is in that?
Rebecca Hall, and I can't remember the
Dominic
name.
West.
Yes, Dominic West. Yeah. Wow. Did you just pull that out of your ass, or are you looking?
Who else is there? Imelda Staunton and Isaac Hempston Wright.
Good Lord.
Good grief. He knows these names.
That's incredible.
That was weird. I loved the movie. There was a moment that you described in the Patreon podcast that when it came, I said, this must be the moment Mike was talking about. There were literally 2 or 3 moments that the hair raised on my arms. I thought it had some solid, creepy ghost scares in it, and nothing better than a period ghost story for me, you know, something in 1922 or whenever this was supposed to be happening. It was gorgeous looking, and it was well acted, and it was genuinely creepy. So thumbs up from me.
All right, yeah, it's a good movie, and if you haven't seen it, I can't even say anything about that scene. Thanks for being on the show, JF. We're about to wrap up anyway. So.
All right. Well, thank you very much for having me, guys. I had a really good time. Anytime you need some poor sucker to hang out with you, I'd be glad to do it. This was a lot of fun.
Great to meet you,
thanks,
man.
man.
They stop showing up.
Cheers.
When all these guys eventually ditch me, yeah. All right,
Someday
appreciate
I'm
it.
gonna die.
All right, so next week we've got Nadia Bolkin, and then that's the final show of the year, because the Sunday after that, Sunday after that is Christmas Eve, and the Sunday after that is New Year's Eve, so we won't have shows on those days. The prize is, you said that's the first edition, right, Matt?
I don't know if it's the first edition, is it? It's got the.
I know it's an edition. I can tell you that for sure.
It's from 1983.
Cycle of the Werewolf.
Illustrations by Bernie Wrightson.
And
the illustrations alone are worth it.
Yeah, they're worth
it. Even though the text is very good.
Send an email to Lovecraft eZine prizes at gmail.com and put Cycle of the Werewolf in the subject of the email, and I'll randomly pick someone in about a week. So, all right. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. And thanks, everybody, for listening, and we'll see you next week.